New report says that prosecutors have convened a grand jury in order to hear evidence and weigh potential charges against former President Donald Trump. Now, that move indicates District Attorney Cyrus Vance Jr., quote, believes he has found evidence of a crime, if not by Trump, then by someone potentially close to him or by his company.
Feels like 2018 all over again. Democratic strategist Roger Fisk and co-host of the Realignment podcast, Marshall Kossoff, they're back to weigh in. It's good to see you both. Marshall, I'll start with you, which is that this has been a contentious position of mine, but I've generally said I think prosecuting your political opponents is a really bad idea. And let's give you a political example, which is that from Maggie Haberman at the New York Times, this is actually one of the things that is driving Trump to start talking about why he wants to run for president again, specifically as a both legal and political check against this type of behavior. So what do you make of it within that context?
Yeah, so this is the thing that which is hard with Trump, which is that on one level, I don't think it's right or even fair just to dismiss basically anything as, well, Trump could do things, therefore we can't do anything. I think it's really dangerous to put things in that framework, and you don't have to be a never Trump or Lincoln Project person to think that that just isn't a great standard. I think the thing that, and this is the thing which is difficult here, is there has to be a way that we can find both accountability if something happened, because like, let's be real, like there's a statistically significant chance that something did happen. Like things don't have to be just Russiagate. So I mean, that's the part which is difficult here. And I think what we should basically do is like let things play out, because I think we just can't blanketly say outright, well, if Trump did it or if Trump is basically able to do anything, we should just avoid pursuing stuff.
Yeah.
Marshall with the hot take of, let's see what happens. Let's wait for more details. Yeah. I mean, that's basically the way I feel about it too, Roger. Like, look, if Trump cheated on his taxes, I believe in wealthy people facing accountability for doing that. So I don't have any problem with it in general. What is your view?
Well, it's interesting, right? I mean, many of us were, kind of ventilating over the idea that there was going to be some kind of drive-by scoop up, like right after the inauguration or something, right? As soon as he returned to moral status. But it turns out it's more of an Iceman cometh kind of situation where it's just, waiting and waiting and waiting. Ostensibly, you could look at his finances in the same way as you look at how he markets his personality, right? In one sense, he inflates, and in another sense, he deflates. He's both the victim and the champion in any number of situations. So you can see how in one sense, he would inflate the value of one of his golf courses or whatever, and then deflate. Supposedly one of them is technically or legally like a goat farm or something to qualify for some kind of tax tax break and things like that. So I could picture them doing this, but as I've said all along, because I'm not going to be one of those people that, starts to chant that someone should be thrown in jail and things like that, that I am in complete agreement with Marshall, which is, there's a process and we'll let it play out. But I would not want to be in the Trump organization's shoes as you see this kind of constellation coming into alignment.
So, Marshall, let me ask you this. This is to this point. Which part of the issue? Cyrus Vance in Manhattan, they promised to bring a prosecution against Trump, obviously bringing in the political angle to this. And it's like you said. Now, look, do I believe Trump cheated on his taxes? Yeah. And here's the thing. I don't think there's a soul alive who voted for him who's like, he would never do that. And so this brings in, again, the political angle, which is that you have the Manhattan DA. He promises that he's going to do it. And I'm not shielding the guy. What I'm saying, though, is I could see some pretty bad political consequences that could come from this decision, especially if you want Trump not to run again. This seems like one of the things which would push him to do so.
Yeah, but this is the problem, which is that, look, you either trust the justice system or you don't trust the justice system. And I actually trust it's possible that you could have a tough talking DA, but like at a core level, I do trust that they're not going to literally make up that Trump, cheated on his taxes and their appeals. And there's like a broad system here. And I think that we're in a somewhat contradictory position, especially given, the type of politics I think all of us here share and are interested, which is if we're going to challenge power, if we're going to challenge the elites, we cannot say, hey, he's the president and a part of the country will get pissed if he gets in trouble for something. Therefore, we have to worry about that. Yeah. I think that that whole dynamic is one I think is just incredibly toxic. And it's one that I just hated during the Trump years. I think a lot of us, just because we had our own versions of Stockholm syndrome, we're always just thinking, OK, like, what do we do just to calm everything down? What do we do to not shake the boat? I mean, that's just like a terrible way to approach this. Yeah. And as we're moving out and going back to, quote unquote, more normalcy, that's something we have to really do. So, Sagar, your job, call out Cyrus if he does something sketchy, but I think that we should just keep moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing you can do is act from principles, because you just don't, I mean, who knows what Donald Trump's going to do? You can't predict it, right? You can't predict what he's going to do. You can't predict how people are going to react. You have to operate from principle. Roger, what do you make of the political dynamics there? Because, I mean, if I was to express a concern about the political dynamics, it would be more that Democrats get too focused on the shiny object of Trump being thrown in prison than on like getting people help and potentially passing health care reform or whatever it is that they don't even want to do that anymore. But whatever it is that they have on their agenda next.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you could make a case that just in the very bald, naked political context that having Trump out there saying that he's going to run and things like that is wonderful for the Democrats. It stifles the bench. It creates a center of gravity around fundraising and bundlers and operatives and all kinds of things that basically puts a whole lot of other people in limbo. I think it's fair to say he's probably going to stretch this out as long as possible because it results in attention and him being discussed and things like that. But then, he is responsible for a brand that lost the White House, the Senate, and the House all in 2 years. So if that's something that he thinks he wants to bring back to the country, as a Democratic operative, I would feel pretty comfortable going back in the ring against that.
Yeah, well, it was very interesting, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great to see you both.
Coming up, former National Press Secretary for the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign, Brianna Joy Gray. She's going to join us when Rising continues.